Hello and welcome to From the Roots Up, where we're building our homestead from the roots up. Today is day 5 in the Every Bit Counts challenge. Mrs. From the Roots Up is under the weather today, and as you can see, it takes two of us to do what she normally does. So I'm doing my best. I've got my best helper here, and we're going to show you how to can green beans. We're going to spend the month of August putting things away, having food stored up for a later day. And so if you are not a subscriber, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell, get notifications, and you will get fun. I almost said canning, but it's more than canning. We'll be dehydrating and freezing and a bunch of stuff all month long, helping you learn new ways or new recipes for putting things away. So my helper here is going to get started. What we're going to do is snap these green beans in smallish pieces. We don't want to puree them, but if you break them into smaller pieces, you can fit more in the jars. And so we're going to start filling these jars. Once we get them as full as we can of green beans, because we don't want to waste space in the canning process, they're going to condense, they're going to compact in there a little bit, and we want our jars to be full. But when we get as many green beans in here as we can, we're going to add some salt. And it is, what are we doing? One teaspoon for our quart jars. And then we're going to add some boiling water. I've got water on the stove right now. She is probably going to snap these beans faster than that big pot of water boils, but we won't make you sit and watch a pot boil because it never does, right? How much water do we put in the jars, Taylor?
You fill it up until either it's an inch away from the top or until all the green beans are covered.
Well, actually it's not either, it's both. We have to make sure all the green beans are covered. If we get it an inch from the top and green beans are poking out and we can't smash them down under the water, then we're gonna actually pull a few out, but I don't think that's gonna happen. So yeah, we want all of the green beans covered in boiling salty water, but we want to leave an inch of headspace before we put them in our pressure canner. By the way, I didn't mention, we're not just regular water bath canning, boiling water canning, whatever it's called. For the green beans today, we have to use the pressure canner, so we'll talk about how that works when we get to it.
These make such a great noise. And I keep hitting myself in the face with green bean juice.
Okay, we don't have quite enough green beans, we don't think, to keep using the quart jars, so we're going to switch and do this last little bit in a pint jar. If there's a little bit left, then we'll just have them for lunch tomorrow, but I know we can't fill another quart jar. This just means we will half the salt that goes in. Everything else will be the same. It will sit in the pressure cooker with the big jars just fine, because we're not going to be stacking and doing 2 levels or 2 layers today. So we're going to keep going and see if we can fill up this little guy. All right, we got 2 quart jars, 1 pint jar, pretty much perfect amount. This will be good. It would have been nice to have filled about 5 more of these big jars, but we knew we didn't have that much. So the next thing that we're going to do is add salt. There will be a teaspoon in each of the big ones, half a teaspoon in the little one, and then that water that is boiling is ready to go. We'll just have to be very careful pouring that in. Some people don't do boiling water, they just add water. I'm not sure if that makes a difference or not. We're just following the recipe. So we're going to go ahead and boil it, and then we'll talk about how to use this big pressure canner. I'm boiling water in a large pot. I'm just using our little pot as a ladle, and then we'll use our canning funnel, and hopefully I don't make a huge mess.
Like that?
No, that wasn't a mess, that was just burning my finger. All right, I may have to, I'll look at that in a minute. I may have put a little too much water in that one, but we'll get it back out. Let's see. Yeah, that's definitely not an inch from the top. That, we need just enough to cover those green beans. Okay, the last thing that we're gonna do to get the jars ready is put the lids on. Now, when you're doing lids like this, you don't want to wrench it down. We're not trying to pressure can with our own power. We want to make sure it's on there straight. Usually I'll twist it backwards and you can kind of feel the threads line up. Finger tight, and then just a little, I don't know, I probably did a 1/2 inch. So you can put those on, Taylor. Yep. There we go. So these are going to go inside our All-American. I'm upset that it's not painted red, white, and blue. All-American pressure canner. It's model number 921, and we'll put a link in the description below where you can find one like this. So a couple of things need to happen to get this ready to do the pressure canning. First off, we want water in it, but we're not filling it up. We're not going to submerge the jars because steam is going to be what pressurizes this time. So we're going to put about 2 to 3 inches in the bottom. So let me turn around and get some water in the bottom of this, and then we'll move on. All right, we're back. Show you how precise I measured that. I just put in the depth of the length of my finger. That should be plenty of water. So a couple of things need to happen before we put the jars in. Number one, we're going to use these little trays. It came with them. We've actually got 2. If we were doing all smaller jars, we could put down a layer, put another tray in, and then stack a second level and do more at once. We don't have that many today, and we've got taller jars. But we're still going to put one of these in the bottom, and what that does is it raises the glass jar up off the bottom of the pot. This is going to be on the burner boiling here in just a minute, and so we're protecting the glass by using the little raised tray. So I'm going to drop this down right in the water, and actually it floats. Metal floats, that's impressive. I'm going to push it down under the water. And then Taylor, you can set the jars in on top of that. You can use those just to show how they work. They're not hot yet, but we're going to definitely need these to get them back out. Okay, and the other thing that we need to do before we can seal this up is, well, we're going to help it seal. On the lid of the pressure canner, there are markings that show you how to line it up properly. But the other thing is we're going to use some of this oil, and we're just going to run a bead of oil right around the edge. You can see it's tapered, it's angled, so it'll sit down inside the angled edge of the pot. And so the oil is going to do a couple of things for us. Number one, it's going to lubricate it and help it slide down into position properly. Number two, it's going to help create a seal. It's almost like putting an O-ring or something in to make sure the steam, the air pressure doesn't leak out. So I'm just using my finger. Probably a little rag or something would be better, but this works. That's what happens when my wife leaves me in charge of things like this. Do it my way. And it's not a lot, I'm not painting it on, it's not goopy and dripping everywhere. It's just a light coat all the way around. Can you see it on there? You see it reflecting in the light? You, I'm asking you.
Yes.
Did I get it all the way around?
Yeah.
Made a little mess there. Okay. So I'm looking for an arrow on the lid. I know y'all won't be able to see that, but there's a little arrow etched in, and there's one side of the pot that has a groove that the arrow lines up with. There's also a little lip, a catch on one side. So we're gonna lay it down. The arrow is not gonna line up until we twist it into place, and that's gonna put this catch underneath this back, whatever this is, this piece that sticks out. There's a notch there, and so we're gonna set it down all the way around, twist it right into place. Now right now, if I lift straight up, it won't come up because this little lip is catching it, okay? But I don't want to lift up, I want it to settle down in there. And then I'm going to start raising the knobs to lock it down. Now I'm showing you that there are 6 on here. I'm not screwing them down tight yet, because what you want to do, if you just start on one and work your way around, you crimp this side down, this side is going to stick up a little bit, you're not going to get a good seal. So this is very similar to if you take the wheel off of your car to change a flat or something, and when you put the new one back on, you alternate tightening the lugs because you want it to tighten slowly all the way across. So that's what we're going to do. I'll start on this side, and I'm going to tighten it not super tight. You can I don't know, you might be able to see this. It's already kind of pushing down one side. So I tighten a little there, I'll come over here and I'll tighten a little to kind of match. And then we'll do a couple more sides. Okay, just a little more than finger tight. And then I'm coming to these. And then I'll come back where I started. And I'm just going to start tightening down a little more. And what that does is it just helps it stay nice and level all the way around. Okay, hopefully I didn't forget anything. We got the water in there, the jars are sitting on the tray, the jars are in there, so we're actually canning green beans and not air. We got the oil seal around, and make sure these are all good and tight. And I also notice I didn't bring in power tools to tighten these. I want them good and tight, but I'm not trying to break my arm. One thing I forgot to mention, but we already checked it, there's a valve on the lid right over here. And this valve is what the steam is going to vent out of while we're boiling and while we're cooking. I guess it's called cooking, it's a pressure cooker. Before you do this, you want to make sure that that is not clogged up. If this has been setting out in your garage all spring, waiting for August to do the challenge, you want to make sure the dirt daubers or something didn't clog that up. And so hold it up, look through, just make sure you can see all the way through it. We did check it. I just forgot to show that once we started recording, but that's the other piece. So what we're going to do is we're going to move this over to the stove. Before I do that, there's a few things that are going to happen. We're going to put it on, we're going to turn on high heat, and we're going to have the water in here start boiling. When it starts boiling, this little vent that we just talked about is going to start spewing steam. That is going to cause all the air that's inside the canner to be forced out. It's also going to kind of get rid of any excess water that we put in. And we're going to set a timer, and we're going to let that just blow steam for 10 minutes. When that's done, it's had a chance to kind of equalize all the pressure that's going on inside there. We're going to come back and we're going to use our weight. Some pressure canners like this one use a weight, others have a gauge that controls the steam exiting. And so depending on what kinds you have, this may be a different step for you. But we're going to use the 10-pound part of the weight. And what that is, we're just covering up the vent hole. It means there's going to have to be 10 pounds of pressure forcing to make this raise up and vent the steam out. If you have it on the wrong one, if you don't pay attention, just stick it on there. then your pressure may be too high or it may be too low, and that could alter the outcome of your canning project. The other thing I will mention so that I don't forget is the weight that you use. You should find this in the recipe, but you also need to check based on your elevation. The atmospheric air pressure that you're cooking in will be different. And so you can actually go to the Ball Mason Jar website, and they've got a little guide right on there. It tells you if you're in these different ranges of elevation, which weight that you need to be canning at, and you can reference that with the recipe that you're doing. So we're doing green beans here in Oklahoma. We're gonna be on the 10-pound weight. And so once we get this on and get this going, 10 minutes with no weight, we're gonna let it just vent out for a little while. When the 10-minute timer goes off, then we'll come back in and we'll talk about adding this and what to watch for on the gauge. So let me get the water boiling. All right, so we put the pressure canner on the stove, high heat. It does take it a little while, especially just heating that big pot and then getting the water inside to boil. But as you can see here, we've got a pretty steady steam coming out of that little nozzle. And so what we're gonna do now is I'm setting a 10-minute timer, and we're gonna let it keep doing this for 10 minutes. I'm not putting the weight on yet. And in 10 minutes, we'll come back. That's giving it time now that there's enough pressure in there, it's steaming, it's starting to force the steam out. That's what's going to really give that pressure a chance to equalize inside. So I got my timer set. We'll be back in 10 minutes, and then we'll add the weight and start watching for that. I don't know if you can hear that. It's so noisy in here. That is my 10-minute timer. As you can see and hear, the steam really picked up during that 10 minutes, but it's been running long enough. We're gonna now move on to the next stage. We're gonna leave the heat on. We're gonna keep the water boiling. This is still gonna take a little while, but now we're going to add our weight. And again, the weight is labeled. There's a 5-pound, 10-pound, 15-pound setting, and that doesn't, obviously the weight of this doesn't change just by turning it, right? But the size of the hole is different, and so the pressure will move this the distance it needs to be to start venting out of the hole. So we're gonna add again the 10-pound weight for our recipe and our elevation, and we're going to start watching now. We're gonna set a timer, but we're not gonna set it yet. We're gonna start watching for the pressure to start jiggling this weight. When it builds up enough, and I'm not sure, it may not take very long at all, but when it builds up enough that it is pushing, and this is being what is controlling the release of the steam, that's when we know we're at the right pressure inside. And then we're gonna set a 25-minute timer and let it just keep going. So let's go add the weight, and I'll zoom in. You can see what that looks like. Okay, now that was easy to put on because it wasn't hot, but when it sits there for 25 minutes on top of boiling water, steam blasting on it, it's gonna be a little warm. So we're gonna use a pot holder when it's time to take it off. But for now, we're waiting until it starts that jiggling, rocking, gyrating, because it's venting out the steam at the proper pressure. So when we see that, then we'll start our 25-minute timer. And that 25 minutes is based on the size of the jar and the recipe, kind of like the 10 pounds is based on the recipe and the elevation. And so check your recipe. That may only take 20 minutes, or it may take longer. For us, it's gonna be 25. So let's watch, and when that starts giving it that jiggle, then we'll set our timer and we'll wait and pick back up after 25 minutes. Okay, you may be able to hear it in the background. We've hit the point where that weight is doing its jiggle stutter thing. I'm gonna show you footage before it started doing that, because the water's boiling and it's fizzing and it's sputtering underneath it, but it hasn't started moving yet. I just want you to be able to see the difference so you know what it is you're looking for. And now that it's doing that, we're going to set our timer for 25 minutes. Again, that's recipe dependent. And so in 25 minutes, we'll come back and we will start, turn the heat off and let it start depressurizing. Before, we're not opening the lid, we're not doing anything yet. We're just gonna let it slowly, calmly chill out. And then when the pressure comes all the way down, I'll show you what that gauge looks like. Then we can open it up, take our green beans out. So timer's going, 25 minutes. I'll see you back in just a second. All right, I'm back and we are almost done. I'm guessing you can still hear the 25-minute timer just stopped. It is still bubbling and spitting and spurting, and now what we're gonna do is turn the heat off. We are not touching that weight yet. Number one, it's gonna be hot, but that's not even, we need it to stay on and let that pressure come down slowly. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn the burner off, and I'm gonna twist the pot around and put the camera on the pressure gauge so you can kind of watch and see. It's actually running a little above 10 pounds, but a pound or two off is not that big a deal. If it's showing 4 or 5 pounds different than what it should be, then your gauge may be messed up and you may need to replace it. But we're running a little above 10 pounds, which is fine. I'm gonna turn the pot around and we'll kind of watch that gauge come back down. After it zeroes out, that's when it's safe to very carefully open the lid, take our jars out. So let's go over, let's kill the heat and let this thing start calming down, and then we'll wrap up. Okay, we are back to finish this thing up. We gave that pressure gauge time to drop all the way down. It's just resting at the bottom. There's no pressure left. I did finally take the weight off after it bottomed out. It is hot. You gotta be careful with it. The pot is still very hot. Just because the pressure came down does not mean that the temperature came down with it. And so we're gonna get our pot holders, and I'm gonna move it over here. We're gonna very carefully take the lid off and go ahead and pull our jars out so they can start cooling for the night. Before we do that, what is your favorite kind of bean?
Pintos.
Pintos.
Refried beans.
Refried. You like green beans?
No.
You don't like green beans?
Not really.
You're crazy. You're no child of mine. Green beans are good. Pinto beans are good, but that's not my favorite. You know what my favorite bean is? Jelly beans. All right, let's grab the very hot pot. Okay, now remember, even though it has depressurized, there was a lot of steam in here. And so you want to be very careful when you start loosening these. And when we open it, I'm going to open it away. So whatever's in there is not just going to pop up in my face. So we're going to start loosening these all the way around, kind of like we tightened. And then there we go, they start dropping off. Okay. I will also note the handle that's on the top of this is not for carrying the whole thing. It's not a suitcase handle. It's probably not good for it to try to support all that weight. This is just to twist and lift off the lid only. All right, I don't know if you can see all that steam, but that's what I didn't want to catch right in my face. So we're going to move this out of the way. I heard one of the lids just finish popping, caving in like it's supposed to. Okay, we're gonna let those set and cool down. That gives us at least a little bit to add to our pantry. One more, did you hear about the guy who went into the doctor? He had green beans shoved in his ears. He said, "Doctor, I feel absolutely terrible. What's wrong with me?" Doctor said, "Well, I can tell just from looking at you, you're not eating right." Because he was putting his green beans in the wrong place. He wasn't eating right, but he felt terrible. Warning, dad jokes. Thank you so much for joining us for another one of our canning videos. If you're not a subscriber, help us out. Hit that subscribe button down below and give us a like if you enjoyed this. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.